Hello everyone and welcome back to another average review. And today we're taking a look at a figure that I've wanted for a good while now. The Marvel Legends 85th anniversary Hulkbuster. Now taking a look at the box, and it's a pretty large Marvel Legends window box. There's the additional, graphics and stuff for the celebrating 85 years of Marvel. Of course, got the Marvel Legends logo and the Hulkbuster name. On the side, we have some artwork of Iron Man in the Extremis armor, which we did take a look at a figure of that in the previous video. And on the back, we see an uncropped version of that artwork. And I mean, this is some awesome artwork, especially with the sheer size of the Hulkbuster. And we can also see a short bio for the Hulkbuster suit, which the bio essentially says the Hulkbuster is made to fight the Hulk. Who knew? So yeah, overall, pretty basic box, but I mean, the sheer size of it is pretty impressive. I mean, just comparing it to Renew Your Vows Spidey, just by the box alone, you can tell this is going to be a massive figure. So hey, let's get him out and take a look at this Hulkbuster. Alright, getting this Hulkbuster out of the box, and there's actually a bit of assembly you gotta do first to get him fully armored up. First of all, you're gonna want to take the front and back pieces of his chest plate and, well, click them into place over his chest. You might want to move the head around a bit so that you can actually, get it firmly in place. Yep, just like so. Then you're going to want to take these two exhaust pieces right here and put them into the actual back panels. Now, they are uniquely shaped, so you won't ever really get them mixed up. Since, I mean, one can only fit into the other. And they'll both be pointing in opposite directions like this. So yeah, just like that, you've completed the actual assembly of the Hulkbuster figure, at least in its fully armored form. Alright, starting off with the sculpting and paintwork on this guy, and I gotta talk about the sheer size of this figure. This figure stands at nearly 9.5 inches tall, which is pretty crazy for Marvel Legends. And that size will definitely be very apparent in the figure comparisons. But it's not just the size of this figure that's crazy, also the amount of sculpted in details. Now, the head is pretty basic looking, but it's a very good, Hulkbuster head sculpt. But look into the honeycomb patterns on the shoulder pads. That is insane. In fact, there's a similar pattern down here on the sides of his thighs, which is just as detailed. Looking onto his, wrist guards, it's a similar texture, although much, much smaller. And that's only talking about the outside of the figure, because beneath the actual chest plate, I showed this earlier, but there is so much tech work and lining on the inside of the actual Hulkbuster chest plate. I mean, just look at this. And same goes for under the head. There's a bunch of silver wiring and sculpting and mechanical doodits and whatsits, which is very important to have there considering one of the alternate head sculpts, but I am getting ahead of myself, and we should put the chest plate pieces back on so that this can go back to just being a normal Hulkbuster. Same for the head sculpt, which, as I've mentioned, does look really good. This figure is pretty dang, heavy and bulky, which is of course fitting for the Hulkbuster. You can see that there's a bit of paint on the actual, unibeam right there on the chest, which is pretty nice to see. There's actually some silver detailing right here on, in between the shoulder and chest, sort of in the armpit area. There's a bit of silver there, which definitely makes sense why Tony would leave that, just unarmored so that the shoulders can move around really well. And plus, they'd be covered pretty well just by having the arms down. That's also not mentioning the amount of mechanical detailing in between, the pelvis area and the actual legs, which is pretty crazy looking. The knee guards do look pretty protective. They have these little dents in them, which are definitely part of the design and not from bullets or anything, but they do look pretty neat. And just like the Extremis armor, the Hulkbuster has 2 toes on the armor, and I'm still not going to question it. Looking on the back, and there's a pretty good amount of detail too. We have these 2 silver exhaust ports and then this bigger one down here. Not much going down the back of the legs besides these 2 silver bits on the back of the boots, but we do see some silver detailing on the elbows. I also really love the color scheme on this Hulkbuster. The gold is very shiny and, well, same goes for the red. And, as we'll see later in the figure comparisons, this Hulkbuster matches really, really well with the Extremis Iron Man. But hey, sculpting and paintwork ain't everything. Another important part of an action figure is the articulation. And despite being such a bulky figure, this Hulkbuster does have some pretty decent articulation. Unfortunately, the head is not part of the decent articulation, since due to the very nature of this Hulkbuster design's head, he can only really move back and forth and side to side and turn his head all the way around, despite there being a ball joint at the base of the neck and a dumbbell joint at the base of the skull. So that's a little disappointing, but like I said earlier, this figure has an alternate head that does make better use of the articulation, but we'll get to that later. What we should get to right now is the fact that he's got the Marvel Legends style shoulders that can spin all the way around. These shoulder pads spin with it, so you don't have to worry about that. And they can also raise up this far, with the shoulder pads once again being able to sort of swivel around and also being a bit of a softer plastic so that the Hulkbuster's arm can raise about 90 degrees. He does have bicep swivel, but his single jointed elbows can actually rotate too, even if they're kind of fighting me. So yeah, actually the bicep swivel is a bit necessary considering how tight the swivel on these swivel hinge elbows are. But hey, the bend in these elbows is pretty decent at 90 degrees, which, yeah, that's about what I'd expect at the very least from single jointed elbows. The Hulkbuster also has Marvel Legends style wrists that can spin around and hinge forward and back, although they are a bit blocked by his massive arm guard. Moving on to the torso articulation, and in terms of that, Hulkbuster has a diaphragm joint and a standard Marvel Legends swivel waist. He gets a little bit of hunch forward, although I kind of wish he had a ball-jointed waist so we could get more, and he actually gets a pretty decent arch back, which is good, considering this head can't really look up at all. He also gets a bit of tilt side to side and twist at both the diaphragm and at the waist swivel, but both are fighting me, and, well, I don't want this figure breaking immediately after I got it, so I'm gonna leave him alone for a fair bit. What works perfectly fine, though, is the Hulkbuster's ball-jointed hips, which can kick up around 90 degrees, which is pretty decent for bulky legs like these, and he can also get a pretty dang decent split, once again, for a bulky robotic figure like this. He's also, of course, got thigh cut, which lets you spin his legs nearly all the way around, although the thighs being a bit bulkier does sort of prevent you from doing that super smoothly without, giving his legs the splits. What is perfectly fine, though, are the double jointed knees, which, once again, get a pretty decent bend for bulky legs like these. He's also, of course, got the Marvel Legends style ankles that can hinge forwards, backwards, and pivot side to side. So overall, for a super bulky figure like the Hulkbuster, this guy has some pretty dang decent articulation, which will be good if he's gotta fight the Hulk. Speaking of Hulk and other characters, though, let's move on to the figure comparisons. Alright, starting the figure comparisons off with the standard male and female comparisons, we of course have the Marvel Legends Renew Your Vows Spider-Man and Spinneret. These may be standard-sized figures, but they look puny compared to the Hulkbuster, which, yeah, that's perfect considering this Hulkbuster is massive. But hey, we gotta take a look at the armor under the oversized armor, so let's bring out the Iron Man from the Amazon exclusive Mandarin 2-pack, since that's definitely the Iron Man that best fits with this Hulkbuster. They're from the same era, and they match very well. The golds and reds are a little bit different in person, but on camera, it is not very noticeable at all, and the similarities between these two definitely make up for any differences they have in terms of color. They look really good together. For some other Iron Men, though, we have the classic AI Tony Stark Iron Man from the Shang-Chi wave, the similarly colored Neo Classic Iron Man. This is actually what they used to show the height of the Hulkbuster. When they first revealed the figure, they actually did use the Neo Classic Iron Man, which is pretty weird considering these two suits couldn't be any more different. At least in terms of red and gold Iron Man suits. Moving away from the red and gold, or red and yellow in the Neo Classic armor's case, we have the Silver Centurion, specifically the old Walgreens exclusive version. Moving on to the 90s, though, and we have the modular armor from the Ursa Major Build-A-Figure wave. And this modular Iron Man also fits really well with this Hulkbuster, especially since the Hulkbuster was originally a bunch of add-ons to the modular armor. But moving from the 90s to the 2000s, we have the also pretty bulky Ultimate Iron Man from the Ultimates. Finally, though, for the Iron Man that came from the cinematic universe inspired by the Ultimates, we have Iron Man from Avengers Endgame in the Mark 85 armor. But hey, I feel like we should also bring out the comic Hulkbuster from the Toy Biz days of Marvel Legend. And yeah, the improvement here is absolutely insane. There are some differences, but these two share a lot of the same design ideas. They have similar shoulder pads, unibeam shapes, knee pads, arm guards. They are very, very similar looking, but they couldn't be more different due to the evolution of action figure engineering, which I think is pretty neat. But hey, what good's a Hulkbuster if it can't bust some Hulks? So, starting off the Hulk comparisons, we have the old Toy Biz Face-Off Hulk, which for a good while was my definitive Legends Hulk. For another Hulk from the Toy Biz era, though, we have the Hulk Classics Rampaging Hulk. But for the Hulk I'm pretty sure most people are going to be pairing this guy with, me included, we have the recent Marvel Legends Maximum Hulk. But hey, that's just the main Hulk. Why not we bring out some others? Starting off with some movie Hulks, we have an actually new addition to my collection, the Marvel Legends Age of Ultron Hulk. For a much more modern figure, though, we have the Avengers Endgame Professor Hulk. Smart Hulk is a pretty good transition into one of the Hulk's other smart personalities, the Grey Hulk, Joe Fixit. But hey, if we're talking about differently colored Hulks, we should bring out the Red Hulk, specifically the MCU version that I just use as a comic Red Hulk, since, I mean, this figure doesn't look anything like Harrison Ford. But hey, for someone that I think most people would agree is the best Hulk, besides Bruce Banner obviously, we have She-Hulk from the retro-carded Iron Man wave. But, as is tradition, here's the Marvel Legends 85th Anniversary Hulkbuster with Hitmonkey and Goliath. Alright, now it's time to talk about the accessories that this Hulkbuster comes with. Now, I think you actually could consider the two chest plate pieces as an accessory, since, I mean, that's probably the reason why they're able to be removed and put back on. Which is a kind of neat feature, but I don't feel like anyone is actually going to have the Hulkbuster displayed like that. But one thing that people definitely will be using is the alternate hands. Now, the Hulkbuster does come pre-packed with a pair of open hands, but the Hulkbuster also, of course, comes with a pair of alternate fisted hands, which, of course, are necessary if you're going to be fighting the Hulk. But there is one extra accessory that this Hulkbuster comes with, which is an alternate unmasked Tony Stark head, which I feel like goes especially well if you take off the two chest plate pieces, since it kind of makes it look like his suit got roughed up, or he's just in the middle of suiting up into the Hulkbuster armor, which I do think is pretty neat. Unfortunately, the fact that this head is pretty big to accommodate for the Hulkbuster, and it also has those little bits of metal around his chin, this won't really work as an unmasked Tony Stark head for any Iron Man figures, which is a real pain, but hey, it's a flaw that he shares with the Amazon exclusive Extremis Iron Man, so they match even more in that regard. Alright, now to talk about one of the most widely disliked aspects of this figure, the price. Now, at release, this figure retailed for $60, which is pretty much always like a super negatively reacted to price by the Marvel Legends community. And it's understandable. I do think this guy is overpriced. But if you look on eBay, you can actually find him for, I'd say, $40 to $50, maybe missing a few accessories, but I mean, still, that's a much better deal, honestly. And I think he should have been priced, in that range, $40 to $50. But even though this guy did retail for $60, I still feel like I got my money's worth. It's a really cool Hulkbuster with a good sculpt and paintwork, and the accessories are fine enough. And plus, the figure's pretty dang massive, along with, well, being an entirely new sculpt, which is especially impressive for a figure this big. Like I said, I do like this Hulkbuster. Great articulation, pretty good paintwork, and great, and I really do mean great sculpting and, size compared to other figures. But there are some areas where he falters. The accessories are kinda lackluster, if I'm being honest. Yes, the removable chest plate is cool, but if you do that, it just looks out of place with the rest of the armor. And I do wish the Tony head sculpt was compatible with other Marvel Legends Iron Man. Just shrinking it a tad bit and removing the metal around his chin line. Even just including that as a second alternate head sculpt along with, the Tony head sculpt they did give us would have gone a long way. Also, I do feel like the hunch forward on, the diaphragm joint could have been better and would have improved this figure a fair bit. But still, I'm a massive sucker for Hulkbuster figures, and this one is probably among the best, especially among the, well, only two that I own. So I think when taking everything into account, I'm going to give the Marvel Legends 85th Anniversary Hulkbuster a 9 out of 10. He's very expensive, but in my opinion, he's mostly worth the price, with a few minor caveats. Tell me what you think in the comments below, though. Do you think I'm overrating, underrating, or that my rating of this figure is pretty dang fair? Either way, if you're still here this far into the video, well, thank you very much for watching, and have a great day, 'cause you deserve it. Bye-bye.